I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Adam Sharp, CEO of Clevertouch Marketing, and also Adam's colleague, Matt Pryor, who is a technical consultant with Clevertouch. Our department, the Department of Digital and Data-Driven Marketing, have a very close and exciting collaboration currently underway with Clevertouch. And it's an absolute delight and an honor to have Adam talking to us today along with Matt. Adam, as an added bonus to all of this, Adam is an alumni of the University of Southampton, which is fantastic. He did his MBA at Southampton. And I know it's one of the things we're really keen to do is to develop a much closer relationship going forward with our alumni. So this is the start of a very exciting venture. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, just some of the kind of mechanics, if you like, a bit of housekeeping for the webinar. The webinar is booked up until 7:30. Now, whether we go to 7:30 or not will depend on the amount of interaction we have and questions and discussion and so on and so forth. Adam and Matt are anticipating that their talk will last somewhere in the region of 50 minutes to 1 hour, again, depending on the amount of Q&A, questions and answers. As I said earlier, just for the benefit of those who may have just joined us, there are some natural breakpoints in Adam and Matt's presentation, and that will be a good point to pause, have a look at the questions in the chat, and we'll handle those and we'll discuss those. And that's the way it'll work. So it's being recorded. Adam and Matt are very happy to share the recording as well as a PDF of their presentation. So again, for everybody on the call, that will be a fantastic resource beyond this webinar. So without any further ado, Adam, I'm going to hand over the presentation to you, and looking forward to it.
Great, Philip, thanks very much. So hi everyone, hopefully you can see the slides here as well. So the title of this session is The Customer Experience Journey and How Martech is Modernizing Marketing. So first thing out there really is Martech is this term that's bundled together to explain marketing technology. And in the last couple of years, Martech has become a pretty pervasive term used by marketeers in all types of industries as well. In terms of the agenda, this is really what I want to cover today. Key point is why every business is a digital business. I'm going to introduce the idea of building trust around what's the purpose of a website, and this idea of the rule of reciprocity. You've got to give a bit of information in order and insight and give a bit of valuable content in order to get insight and knowledge from individuals, from customers as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about Martech. I'm going to talk a bit about this idea of the modern marketeer. Again, a lot of the marketing and marketing textbooks that we were brought up on were, dare I say it, more in a pre-digital world. It's changing quite a lot, but there's this concept of modern marketing, which is gaining a lot of traction in organizations as well. And then I'm going to give you some examples of smarter journeys, and I also want to talk about some of the risks and limitations around implementing Martech as well. And then finally at the end, Matt is going to talk about a one-day taster day, if any of this is of interest to students out there. One day taster day to learn a little bit more about some of the technologies. And for those that are super keen, we're going to be looking at helping and supporting a few select students to get to full certification as well. So what I'll try and do is I'll try and flip quite quickly through this stuff, but if there's anything that sort of triggers your interest or you totally disagree, then please jump on the chat as well. So I should disclose this as well. Philip's done a very kind introduction. We as a business, we specialize in this stuff. So it's also our bias, if you like, as well. we're all bounded by our own rationality. But we work with a lot of companies. We develop both software and services. Our software is used by people like brands like Coca-Cola, London Stock Exchange, and Shell. And our services, we deliver services to people like Deliveroo, Deloitte, and Fujitsu. And I'm going to introduce some of the things that these guys are doing as well, in their own marketing as well. The thing we're probably most proud of is, we do have vendor partnerships, but it's the Sunday Times top, Sunday Times top 100 companies, and we spend a lot of time on employee engagement, which is why we've got that 3-star award as well. As Philip said, this is my background. After the Southampton MBA, I joined IBM and then worked in a lot of tech businesses. Here's my LinkedIn, and please, I'd love to link in with any students as well. And I hope you're on LinkedIn now as well, because it's just a great precursor for managing your careers as well. I also am a fellow of the IDM, and the IDM is a body to promote marketing as a career as well. So we're pretty passionate about this stuff. Matt, if you don't mind, I'll do a quick intro on you. But Matt's been with us for about 8 years now. He's a technical expert. There is such a shortage in marketing with Martec skills. So if you do want to add a string to your bow, it's such a great area to have knowledge on, and almost, I'll say you'll be guaranteed a job, but there is such a shortage. We developed a campaign around the war for talent with a chap called the Marketoonist. Here was one of his ads on this slide here, and so hopefully you'll get something out of today. And as I say, I'd encourage you all to learn and look at what's going on in Martec, because it's becoming so prevalent to all marketing careers going forward. Again, there's Matt's LinkedIn as well, and I'm sure he'd love to hear from you as well. So opening section, I talked about why every business is a digital business. Now, I want to start with this lot here. Love them or hate them, what Amazon do, and a lot of people are being very critical that they've killed the high street. Actually, that wasn't Amazon. That was customer choice, but also with COVID more recently. The thing that Amazon do really well is, they remember who you are when you visit. They can recognize stuff that you've looked at but haven't necessarily bought, and so they're trying to encourage you to purchase. Their customer service and their account management with issues and returns is pretty solid. And they integrate to email quite well. And so they offer this mass personalization. But best of all, and this is the most important thing, is that what they do really well is they connect the digital with the physical. Now, the thing about Amazon and a lot of these startups that are going on at the moment, they were born digital. So it's very easy for them to integrate both digital and physical. A lot of the clients we're working with were born at a different era. I've got an example here from Brew and Dolphin. They were founded when the US was still a colony. What they offer is a high-touch service. It's around wealth management. Often it's around passing wealth from one generation to another. It's very private and personal, so there's a high degree of integrity. And they sell and they market both through intermediaries like lawyers and accountants, but they're also having to work with some of the fund managers and intermediaries as well. And these guys, clearly they weren't born digital in 1762, but just like Amazon, what they're trying to do now is modernize their paper pushing, if you like, and make everything online as much as possible. Here's an example of a little app. They do a lot of events. They do a Chelsea flower show. They're doing cycling is the new golf. So they're trying to target people that have got an interest here. They run a lot of physical events. And what they're trying to do here with this app is capture people's information. There's an acceptance around the privacy, and then they submit it. And then it's synchronizing to a back office system, which we're going to talk about a little bit, called, there we are, syncing at the moment, to Marketo. Marketo is a platform owned by Adobe, and it's really about managing that customer experience and customer connection in a back office system. Now, to do this requires process. And so just as we're integrating the digital with the physical, in this instance, we are doing exactly that. We're mixing the offline with the online. And increasingly, marketing technology is being used to do this and to help businesses adapt and thrive in the future. A lot of this tech involves process and workflows. And certainly when I worked at IBM, I used to cross the street to avoid the marketing operations people. They were a bit like the military police. Their role was to say no to a lot of things. But increasingly, that world has turned upside down. A lot of marketers, by their very nature, live, if you like, on the creative side, it's the innovative side, but we need this balance with process and structure as well. And so the advent and introduction of workflows is something you're going to see quite a lot throughout this presentation. So in this instance, the event is that little hexagon that you can see that's sort of honeycomb colored. But the build up to that is all about a structured process involving emails, involving landing pages, involving follow-up. It's all about integrating and building that depth to a campaign and a customer experience. Now, you know, this is very opportune and relevant at the moment and pretty sad, but it's very clear that those organizations that invest in tech for a better customer experience are thriving. Now, a lot of turmoil has been caused because of COVID, but you know, you only have to go onto the ASOS website and you can have a look at both their performance as a business. They're doing pretty well, but they're also very transparent about their business model, which is they invest in their brands, they're building a platform, and again, one of the things that will come out of today is that there's a differentiation between a technology or an app and a platform. They're building a platform just as Amazon have built a platform, and the platform is there to enhance the customer experience. You compare that to, you know, Arcadia, who, you know, you can criticize leadership and some of the things going on there, and some of it is pretty woeful and disgusting. But their website was really a brochure, and it would showcase the brands. There was a little bit of shopping capability, but the prime experience was to encourage users to get into the stores or to come and visit the shops. And customers have moved on for that, and obviously because of COVID at the moment, that's been an additional dimension. But what is clear is they were left behind in terms of their investment in technology. So one of the terms I said earlier is this concept of modern. What do we mean by modern? Well, again, you know, I'll bow to the university to give you a better view of the role of the CMO. But I think it's quite simple, frankly. I use this graphic quite a lot. The black circles here represent the external face of the role of the Chief Marketing Officer. That is around the brand, the positioning, and the purpose, and so forth. And it's to maintain that radar, because over time, customers and companies fall apart. And so it's maintaining that stickiness, that relevance. Internally, it's to provide growth of the function to be relevant for the future, but also growth of revenue, and to provide that insight and innovation. And then, if you like, underpinning all that is that I think one of the biggest roles in marketing today is to translate the opportunity for technology back into the business. So if it's left purely to the IT function, they tend to measure things in customer issues and records. And you know, we're not customers, we're job numbers. There's a massive opportunity for marketers to look at the technology and then to provide a new source of innovation and growth back into that business as well. And so, as I say, one of the saddest things at the moment actually is that people tend to get down into the granular detail of the features. And it's really important that you stay above that. We think there's 12 business reasons for doing this stuff, and we'll cover that later on as well. But at the end of the day, marketing has still got a bit of a negative perception in a lot of businesses. I remember the CMO of Motorola once said, look, our job is really simple. It's to move the dial from the perception of marketing as a cost center to one of a profit center. And so throughout this presentation, I want to give you various reporting frameworks, various models and case studies, and also an overview of the technology, which hopefully will help you when you look for work to carry on shifting that dial as marketing as a profit center as well. What I would say is, in a lot of marketing organizations, and it is changing as well, is that marketing has actually been quite lamentable in that because this technology didn't sit together very well, it meant that marketing's remit, if you like, was to focus on the air cover metrics, or sometimes referred to as the vanity metrics. That is, looking at the followers or the web hits or the level of influences. It was quite difficult in a lot of businesses to really measure that marketing attribution all the way through to sales one, because the technology wasn't joined up. It's great, and increasingly organizations are putting much more emphasis around marketing performance management, and I know it's something that Southampton University teach. It's fabulous, but again, that I think it's incumbent on all marketers now to really drive that almost be relentless in trying to drive reporting through from lead source all the way through to Salesforce, if you like, all the way through the pipeline of a function. Here are some charts that we use ourselves inside the business. We make these charts. There's about at least 12 charts that I use. There's more around the business. We try to be very, very open. We're trying to drive a data-driven culture. Again, a lot of businesses, in the past, the culture was to try and control everything and not be very open. Now these reports, with the technology, this is based on Tableau, which is a business information tool I'll talk a little bit about later. They refresh every 15 minutes and they provide that time series analysis. And so again, it's incumbent on you as marketeers when you go out into industry to join up this technology so that you really can measure and show that contribution to the business going forward. And why is this? Why did that problem exist before? Well, this was the traditional marketing and sales model that a lot of businesses adopted. Marketing's role was to provide that air cover. It was the thought leadership, the awareness, and they would be targeting the known and aware through the marketing database, and hopefully through some of the social media platforms that may be addressing people that were out of their reach and unknown to them, but maybe tracking the business, or both were mutually and blissfully unaware of each other. And as I say, marketing's prime reason of existing was to get the brand out there, extend the reach, create some awareness, and then often the sales relationship would then run everything. Now, there is a slight difference between B2B and B2C, and I'll talk about that later, but the sales domain in a lot of organizations was to run the whole relationship once that lead or opportunity was generated. And this was the old model, and unfortunately a lot of businesses cling on to this. But it's changed, and it's changed because of the digital world we live in, and customers have really driven the change. And so this new digital model, which provides lower cost, more convenience and choice, just think about ASOS or Amazon, it means that there's a bigger opportunity and responsibility for marketing to play in this area. I'm not sure if this is reading material for marketers out there as well, but there's an organization called the CEB, who are now actually owned by Gartner, one of the research companies. And this research was financed by Google, so there is a slight bias here, if you like. But they came along and said, look, actually, 57% of the buying process happens before anyone knows about it. And whether you're buying a very large capital purchase for a business, or you're buying a bike or a pair of trousers or whatever, jeans, we inherently go through the same cycle, that we do the research ourselves, we can hold the vendors at a distance, and at the point that we want to engage them, we can sort of open up and either visit the physical or transact the sale. So CB came up and said, look, it's 57% of the buying process happens before anyone knows about it. And then various consultants. Gartner CB weren't owned by them at the time, and Forrester said, no, it's 70%, and someone else said it's 80%. But frankly, the metrics don't matter, but the model inherently makes sense, that we all do our research from the comfort of our own house, and we're in control. We drive the relationship as well. And so this new normal, this modern world, if you like, we're living in now, is that buyers are in control. We actually need different skills in both sales and marketing. So the outcome of the CB research was this book called The Challenger Sale. And the whole idea here is, look, they're saying to organizations, we need a layered sales model. The relationship is done digitally, but we need consultative sales who can challenge the status quo, challenge the assumptions, and provide that additional value add. So from a sales lens, that's quite interesting. But from a marketeer's perspective, around about the same time, this book came out called The Digital Body Language. And it was written by the CTO of Eloqua, which is now the marketing automation platform of Oracle. And he basically, Steve Woods, Canadian guy, basically said, look, when you're in a meeting, you can see whether people are switched on, engaged, understanding, or asleep. You know, we want to pick up the same cues, the same signals from digital behavior. And what we're basically saying is, because of the CB research, that 57% of the buying process, or 2/3, happens before anyone knows about it, marketers now have to set or serve up content in a coherent order that really encourages that level of engagement. And so digital body language, when it came out, sort of set the benchmark of a new way of thinking, that marketing's responsibility was to build depth and insight and really build this relationship based on trust. It's a great book. If you can still find it, it's fabulous, and we still give it to clients every now and again, because it's a great way to explain back to non-marketeers what's going on in the world. So this world changes things quite a lot. There's massive implications for businesses at the moment. It means that, as I say, marketing has to take on much more of a responsibility of the selling, if you like, but it's got to be subtle selling through helping clients through coherent content at the right times. What is also interesting is that these technologies, 10, 15 years ago, the cost of implementing, when I was at Quantum, I implemented an integrated website to a call center, and the budget was $2 million to get it going. The budget's come down to a fraction of this now. And so actually a lot of marketing organizations are buying this with their operational budget, their OPEX budget, rather than capital. So the barriers to entry are really low. And that creates opportunities for agile based competitors, technology-oriented competitors. Just think about people like Monzo in the banking world. It's, you know, they're outsmarting the traditional banks, and they can do it with a much lower cost base. The same for Bulb, a provider of energy. You know, they're actually trying to encourage their customers to use less energy to become more sustainable and socially responsible, and they're giving up tools. So they're helping their customers rather than just trying to sell to them. And the term disruptive technology, it really was coined from this chap called Clayton Christensen, who wrote this book called The Innovators Dilemma, who basically said that as technology comes along, there's always technology that will come in from below the existing incumbents and will disrupt based on a message of simplicity, of ease of use, and lower cost base. And we're seeing that everywhere. Again, I'm not sure if this is on the reading list, but it's certainly in the technology industry. This book took the tech industry by storm. And so organizations are trying to transform their modern message and the way they go to market. A great example here is Microsoft. Now they're a massive user of marketing technology. One of the largest users of Marketo, which is a technology owned by Adobe. And the way they tried to say, look, we've got a new way of thinking, is they use this slide, and I think it's really, really powerful. And when we're working with clients, we encourage them to describe the as is and the to be, because it's all about change management. And so they talked about the old world of marketing, which was transactional, it was one-off emails, it was a PR event. Often things were done differently in each geography, and so there was this headquarters versus field scenario, very sales driven. And what they sort of said is, look, the buyers are in control, we're moving to a more digital connected world. It's about nurturing long-term relationships where marketing and sales come together rather than hating each other and talking different language. And it's all about multi-channel journeys as well. And so you think even a technology business, this would be inherent to them, but it's not. I'll give some other examples of technology businesses throughout the session. But all this kicked off, I'm sure Poirot and Philip and Monica will remember Peppers and Rogers. These guys came up with this concept of relationship marketing in the 90s. It's where the term CRM, customer relationship marketing, came from. And they talked about, back in the 90s, that it's all about personalized messaging. It's about helping customers, remembering conversations so you don't ask them the same information again and again, and using technology to make your job, the job of marketing, easier. The problem was it took about 10, 15 years for the marketing to catch up. And ironically, in this space, CRM came about on the back of that stuff. So things like Salesforce, or at the time it was Oracle and Siebel, came about before marketing technology was there. And so you have this chicken and egg. A lot of companies have CRM systems, database customer contact systems that are pretty pervasive, but it took marketing 10 years to catch up and to deliver technologies that were, if you like, usable and fit for purpose. And I'm going to talk about that now, if I may. Are there any questions at all at the moment? Right, hang on. Adam, hello Adam. How do you think the role of the CMO has evolved since 2000? Yeah, I think it's evolved massively. As I say, in 2010, when we were kicking off, there was about 100 marketing technology vendors out there. Most of them were click technologies, web analytics technologies. Now there's about 8,000 of them. So again, getting to grips with the technology is a massive challenge. I think the principles of marketing around marketing strategy, around segmentation, positioning, and targeting are still there, but we've got way more channels to manage now as well, and it's very, very difficult to manage all those as well. But the skills that marketing functions are now deploying are totally different now as well. As I say, marketing operations 10 years ago was about process, but it was flawed and paper-based. Development didn't sit inside marketing functions where it does now, and marketing functions are developing project management skills and capability. So we hear a lot of marketing functions talk about agile marketing now, which is a total new game changer for marketing functions as well. Hopefully I've answered that question there, but it's basically the job's got harder, not easier. But the ability to influence, going back to that funnel, if you like, the scope of influence is now much, much bigger. And that's where I think it's exciting. I now want to move on a little bit from moving from web brochures to what I call engagement engines. So without the right technology in place, most websites are simply brochures. They provide a point of contact. They direct people, often to the physical. Again, I don't mean this in poor taste at all, but referencing Arcadia, their website, like a lot of websites, encourage people to call this number or visit this store. And actually, it's just not relevant. You could certainly give ASOS here a black mark for their taste of colours and branding. It's definitely a bit blingy. But the principal reason for a website existing should be there to help build brand and build trust. And this idea of a value exchange, it's there to help customers and help prospects. And in return, this rule of reciprocity is to provide insight and intelligence back to the business. So I'm hoping people understand that there is a slight difference between B2B, B2C, and B2B2C. I think I've got too many in here. There's a slight difference, but both types of organizations, B2B and B2C, are deploying these sort of technologies. So in the B2C world, it tends to be, I've got an example here of Lululemon. It tends to be largely brand-led, aspirational, quite transactional. It typically involves an individual and a shopping cart. Businesses like Fujitsu, more complex sales, typically B2B, they're selling off an infrastructure. There's a complex buying process, lots of stakeholders, high touch, high involvement. And then you've got organizations like Deliveroo who are selling both to consumers, but also to restaurants and to other channels as well. They're B2B2C. But fundamentally, the need for, if you like, sustainable marketing is exactly the same. So whether you're, say, a B2B or a B2C, you're roughly looking at doing the same thing. It's about acquiring new customers through acquisition, but then it's about retaining them. I would say B2B at the moment tends to focus a lot more on the acquisition, and they're building complex journeys. And B2C, and I think they're leading that way, frankly, but I do believe that B2C is better at some of the retention stuff and work around net promoter scores and so forth. You know, we talk a lot about sustainable marketing, the idea that products come back from don't come back from customers that do. So how do you move from a web brochure to a real engagement engine, if you like? Well, this needs this new technology. There's two types really: marketing automation, marketing cloud. Marketing cloud typically is used by B2C, so consumer brands, because it's all about volume. It's about linking to shopping cart experience, linking to geolocation data as well. I'll give some examples later. Marketing automation tends to be focused a lot more around the complex programming and nurturing, if you like. But in either instance, the marketing automation, marketing cloud, it sits behind the website. It manages the outbound, but also the inbound activity. And it's really about giving organizations the ability to offer programmable, personalized campaigns that are always on, and then the ability to route information to the right parts of the business automatically as well. So 10 years ago, this was very, very new. I'd say Eloqua, the pioneer. Pardot then was acquired by Salesforce, and that drove up knowledge and adoption. And Marketo was the Eloqua was Canadian. Marketo was the Californian upstart that probably about 3 years ago was acquired by Adobe. And so typically these big vendors, Adobe, Oracle, and Salesforce, have both an MA and a marketing cloud offering. And so again, both, you know, it's typically either or. Some people like Deliveroo use both. But again, having a bit of an understanding as you enter your career is pretty important as well. And the reason you need it is that, as I say, a few years ago, there was this concept that content is king. And so marketers were becoming content factories, creating loads and loads of content, reacting to everything. And that was the old way of working, because 70–80% of content isn't actually used. It's developed, thrown away, and something else comes and replaces it. Modern marketing really is about testing, refining, and improving marketing processes. So that, as we talked about this new model of building depth and strata to a campaign, to let the digital experience do the selling and helping your clients. At the same time, companies need to start building depth into their processes and programs as well, and putting content in a coherent, relevant order. And so I've got an example here. I talked about the fact that how do you move to this intelligent engagement engine so that you actually know who is visiting your website. So you move from anonymous to known. Well, companies like Rockwool, they specialize in building materials for, based out of wool, frankly. What they're trying to do with their customers and prospects is they're building what they call preference centers. The idea that they want to share and help clients, but in return, build up a profile and a knowledge about them as well. And so what Rockwell are doing is they're encouraging clients to come in, self-select their preferences of how often clients and prospects want to hear from them and what format. And to do that, they're building behind the back end, first in Visio and then on the marketing automation platforms on their canvas, they're building these automated campaigns such that they're always on, that people can join from email, from web, or from social. There's a landing page there, and it doesn't involve individual heroics to scale the business and the opportunity. And once that's done, organizations can be a little bit smarter, so they can build education and knowledge programs, again, that are fully automated. And all the time, what the organizations are doing is building up a profile of individuals. And so as individuals engage on these websites, as I say, a brochure website is, everyone is anonymous. But what organizations are trying to encourage now is interactivity and engagement. And so what they're trying to do is that they can score people based on who they are, the explicit data. So I know which company or what high net worth individual is, but I can also engage them based on their level of engagement and activity as well. And it's all about building trust and engagement, and in return, getting information back. It's also, actually, ironically, while you're capturing more data, it's also building a level of trust as well. There's an example here of Mezzo. Again, they have a privacy, a preference center as well. But being a Finnish organization, they're very precious and sensitive around customer data and how they manage it. And so organizations need this back office system like marketing automation, marketing cloud, to manage, to make sure their data is held. They can keep a track record of it. They can offer suppression or some scribes and so forth in order to be Gdpr compliant. And so again, this infrastructure is around protecting the interests and privacy of the individuals as well. Just to give you a very quick example, here's we launched the State of Martech report. This was just yesterday, actually. It just gives an example of what organizations are able to do with these platforms. So in the middle, you'll see the form. This is the landing page. But we're able to put out the news of this research out on email, but also on blog. There was a video on LinkedIn. And so on multi-channels, and what we're encouraging individuals to do, both known and unknown, is to either click on it, to download it, or fill in the form. And once we move people from unknown to known, we grab all that historical data on them, on their insight. So it's almost retrospective. The platform we use, we're using Eloqua at the moment, gives us data that goes back 6 months. So if we're turning people from browsers into engaged, we're picking up all that insight on them as well. And then more importantly, that information can then, we hit certain triggers based on their scoring so that we can share information and route that information to the right people around the organization as well. So everything is managed and controlled, and there's not a spreadsheet in play. So how important is customer experience? Well, as I say, I don't know about you, but if I click on a website, it's clunky, it's not responsive design, it's not seamless, it's got very annoying, aggressive, assertive chats, it loses me straight away. As I say, the website really should be about a value exchange. It's about building trust and brand, and it's fundamentally there to help customers choose wisely. I referenced this book here. I think it was Robert Cialdini who came up with this idea of the rule of reciprocity. You've got to give some information of value in order to get something back. I see there's a few questions there. Let's have a quick look. What have we got here? Following my previous question, what do you and your colleagues think about the lessons B2C may learn from B2b marketing? As I say, in most areas, B2C has led the way, but I would say when it comes to Martec, B2B is the one area where actually there's been a lot more leadership because of the importance of nurturing. So often in B2C brands, they focus purely on the brand and the experience, and they've been scared with technology, and so they've left it to the IT function. Whereas B2B, and it's primarily because a lot of the B2B brands are tech, they're much more comfortable with technology, and so they embraced it and they set the standards, if you like. There's a question about GDPR. How can marketers leverage this regulation to the benefit? Well, for me, the saddest thing and one of the most lamentable things about GDPR is that it was an EU, I can't remember if it was an EU regulation or directive, someone will tell me it's regulation probably, but unfortunately it was one of the biggest and most important innovations to hit marketing for a long time, and it came out of a legal department in Brussels or Strasbourg, and that was the biggest shame, because marketers should be managing data in a responsible and an intelligent way. I think it was the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, who said that data privacy is now a human right, and it is a currency in its own right as well. And some of the ways that organizations were managing people's data was in spreadsheets, which is open to security issues, and it's basically showing a lack of respect as well. So initially, a lot of marketers were fearful of GDPR, but they came to embrace it. And the great thing about it was that it had boardroom visibility, and suddenly it became people were scared, because suddenly there was a regulation coming down on organizations that actually had teeth, which was great. Fined if they didn't do it responsibly. So actually, most marketers went from being fearful of it to actually embracing it as good practice. Unfortunately, as I say, it took a legal policy from the EU to drive that innovation and thinking. I've got another example here of again a B2C transaction, and often the great thing about this is a recent experience I had with AO. The great thing about these guys is that they're mixing up channels. They're using both SMS, web, email. They're then using Net Promoter Score, and then a text afterwards, again around satisfaction of the courier. So it's that total customer care. At this point, actually, I have to say, I thought the AO experience was brilliant, but now they're getting to the point whereby they're harassing me, because all they want to do is get publish something on Trustpilot and whatever. And so organizations, again, need to balance that brand integrity with privacy and trust as well. And I don't think they necessarily get that right. Customer engagement. Inherently, as a marketer, we're pretty passionate about customer engagement, customer experience. We know there is a strong correlation. As I say, working with Deloitte, they basically say, look, the purpose for our marketing and our website is one thing. It's about building trust. That's it. So we know, for example, inherently as marketers that responsible marketing, managing data through GDPR and so forth, drives that level of engagement and trust. Particularly in the insurance industry, for example, transactional players like Payment Shield, they're building these campaigns now for both advisors, for new members, to re-engage companies and advisors that are dormant as well. Around B2C, this is where the marketing cloud, not marketing automation, kicks in as well. People like Adecco are now looking at building postcode intelligence into their campaign behavior as well. So they're able to deliver mass personalized campaigns, but at the local geographic level. So again, it's about delivering something that's relevant as well. In this instance, they're delivering something on behalf of the UK government, and they're able to literally drill down into the geo data to drive relevancy and personalization. And then what they're trying to do, again, is build lots of touch points. So they build up profile and intelligence around possible candidates through an automated journey. If you try to do this manually, it just wouldn't happen. And this is why campaigns have to be built into the technology canvas. So once they're built, they can just run, fully automated, 24/7. Now, as I say, while as marketeers, we're passionate about customer experience, we know it's the right thing to do, I also guard with that with a degree of pragmatism. So when we were working with Fujitsu, we built all this, put all this marketing automation in place. They actually had 30 different technology systems around Europe. And what they wanted to do, a bit like Microsoft, they wanted to consolidate it onto one, and they wanted to drive out cost. And so their prime drivers for this was around efficiencies and scale, and then also providing that customer intelligence by building that end-to-end from website all the way down to the business intelligence platforms. For them, customer experience was important, but it was a number 3. And that's important to realize as well, that marketeers, while we can be sort of passionate about this stuff, we also have to be pragmatic as well. VMware is a global leader in virtualization software. So big into the IT functions. They were the pioneers of marketing automation. Silicon Valley based business, multi-billion turnover. We've been working with them for about 8 years now. The reason they've invested in this technology, again, like Fujitsu, is to drive scale and operational efficiencies. If any of you are interested in this stuff, there's a Marketing Automation for Dummies book. There are case studies along with Legal and General in there as well. But what they're trying to do is to provide consistency so that one campaign can be rinsed and repeated. And once they build it once, and you'll see the landing page moving up here, they build something in one language, and very quickly it's adaptable, scalable, repeatable. There we are. It's flipped to French straight away as well. So they build in one language, and then they roll out almost immediately in multiple languages as well. So in general, I'd sort of summarize the whole customer experience thing as, look, as marketers, be fanatical about it, but and the general trend is that campaigns and marketers are building greater complexity in their campaigns, and they're really building them with marketers in mind. But there is also still in businesses a big driver to drive scale and marketing attribution as well. And so you know, I'd say to marketers, be passionate about it, but don't become a pariah by only pushing that to the sake of everything else. Okay, so how pervasive is marketing technology? So Gartner are a massively respected consultancy in this space, and last year they actually said for the first time ever that the spend in Martec is going to outspend the spend in people, which had huge ramifications. The problem is I say it's a problem, it's also a fascinating blog. But again, when we first started, there was about 100, 150 companies up here. This is an old chart, there's about 8,000. This blog called Chief Martech is tracking the ecosystem. And as I say, 8,000 of them at the moment. As marketeers, you have to differentiate between what is a platform, what is an application, and what is a technology tool. And often there's been so much money that's thrown at marketing technology and so much excitement that features which should be embedded in other technologies are suddenly raising money and being called products in their own right. And it's just nonsense. So this slide is massively used, so fair play to Scott Brinker for developing it, but it just really highlights, for me, one thing. It's a bibliography. It shows where the money's gone. Crazy money's gone into this. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations are saying, well, they're taking this and they're almost incorporating this idea of the Martec stack as their strategy. And so along comes the stackies. And again, I don't mean to be particularly harsh on Cisco, but you know, life is so much easier on PowerPoint. But if I look at this slide along here, there's so many technologies here that are duplicate. And absolutely, while it looks beautiful in PowerPoint, there is no integration here. And so this organization will be replacing spreadsheets in one area with yet more spreadsheets elsewhere. And this is not the way to think about marketing technology. Philips, a similar thing. Again, these PowerPoints might win awards, but there's so many duplicate systems here. It just makes no business sense. Now, the reality is, it's about simplification, marketing technology. We think there's only 4 or 6 technologies that you really need. The first one is a content management system, which most people will be aware of. The content management system helps you build a website. So you can design red buttons, pink buttons, all that sort of stuff. So that's inherent in most websites today, whether it's in WordPress or something like Core Metrics and so forth. The back-end piece is where you've got to have that coherent marketing technologies, the Martec, to build that sustainable marketing. And it looks like this, really. So in most businesses, you either pick marketing automation or marketing cloud. In smaller businesses, you can use an ESP, an email provider, someone like MailChimp or .mailer. They're really, really good, and they're trying to build up more capabilities. .mailer, trying to reposition themselves as a marketing automation platform. And you use the marketing automation for the journeys and for that insight and that reciprocity of information. Then behind that, you have the CRM. And this is often the CRM, because it came first, it became the database, the marketing database. And so it's things like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics. Now, many organizations, this becomes the final dumping ground of data, and it makes no sense. Actually, you want most of your prospect and data in the marketing automation cloud. You want your close customers, or those that have bought from you in the past, be it B2C or B2B, in that CRM, because it's all about opportunity management. It's about the forecasting. And then underneath this, we're big advocates of business intelligence tools, because while all these tools at the top, the CMS, the automation tools, CRM, they all have a degree of reporting, but it tends to be transactional rather than over time. And really, as marketers, you want to build that time series analysis. So this is the basic marketing automation. In the SMB to mid-market, and in small businesses, as I say, you can replace marketing automation from an email platform, but there's more limited functionality. In enterprise organizations, where there's much more content to be managed, we would advocate the use of content management systems at the top. And increasingly, sales enablement is an area which is gaining massive traction. It's all about how do you make sales functions more effective and more up to speed. Here's the lamentable. This is from last year's Martec stat report. But most organizations, even those with the showy, the showy slides of their tech infrastructure, most of that infrastructure isn't integrated. And if it's not joined up, then the ability to inform, to provide insight back to the business is really, really limited as well. So as you go out and start work, as I say, start reading around this Martec stuff, start looking at what are platforms. Remember, ASOS talked about their platforms. Get an idea of what is a coherent technology stack. We talk a lot more about the spine, because once the spine's in place, you can add additional technologies. And there's always nuances for different industries. So in your financial services, they've got certain data systems that have to be approved by their regulators. If you're an online platform, may be more important. So that might form part of your spine. But you don't want to go out there and start implementing features that are masquerading as platforms or technologies, because it just is a recipe for failure. So I'm just coming up to the end now. So and I'm going to hand over to Matt, if I may. So I'm going to really talk about why do people fail, because it isn't the technology. We actually see, though, a lot of people blame the technology, and about 1/3 of our business at the moment comes from migrations off one platform to another. But essentially, it's about people. But before we talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about the limitations of Martec today, and hopefully where it might go in the future. And hopefully it's something we could explore with some of you that are really passionate or interested about it. Well, the first thing is that the first limitation I think around marketing automation and marketing cloud journeys is, it's great that companies are trying to build depth into their campaigns and they're joining them all up and they're mapping it all out. And this provides, the Visio provides a template for content in a logical order, which can then be built into the campaign canvas, if you like. But these frameworks are still quite restrictive. They're not quite as fluid or as adaptive as they should be. They're driven by the company's perception of what is important to their prospects or their customers. Now, people can join, if it's set up properly, people can join a campaign from any point on a website or from a social media form, but there's still a workflow to work through. And so perhaps, again, we should be incorporating machine learning or a little bit of adaptive technology, a bit like a sat nav will adapt to the conditions of the road. Maybe we should be building that into the marketing automation and marketing technologies as well. Another limitation is, I've covered this quite a lot, is the lack of integration of one system talking to another. So this graphic here, it was taken from one of our customers. Each bubble here denotes a job function in their database. Now, obviously, titles like marketing director are a little bit pinker and fatter than others. But if data is not structured properly in databases in these systems, and if you have loads of systems and there isn't clarity on what is the master and what is the slaves, if you like, then all you're doing is just capturing more data, and your ability to do anything with it is radically reduced. I was listening to a podcast on privacy, and I didn't quite get capture the chap's name, but he was very clever, and he talked about the fact that our ability to capture data far exceeds our ability to interpret it. And it's so true. Marketers inherently, and with all these systems they put in place, they can capture this, they can capture that, but their ability to actually knock it together in a coherent message for the business is, in many instances, under an area of that lacks focus as well. Another limitation is around predictive models. So I talked a little bit about the idea of scoring people based on who they are and their level of engagement. Well, that scoring, and therefore based on hitting certain thresholds and triggers, we can route that intelligence to the right parts of the business. That scoring doesn't always lead to intent, and frankly, it isn't that predictive. And certainly that's something we would like to look at a business. So for example, is there any way that we could look at certain behaviors of key individuals, and based on that, infer that there could be other people that we might like to target or engage or take through that journey as well? So again, that's a big weakness on the platforms as well. And then, as I say, another limitation is around the intelligence on these systems as well. So as I say, we love Tableau, Power BI is another, and Domo, they're all business intelligence tools that aggregate data from different systems and give you that ability to drill down and whatever, but it's always user defined. It's up to the individual to click on here to look for that. And really and so they tend to be passive, if you like, passive dashboards. Again, where we would like to go now, and Tableau now owned by Salesforce, they've opened up their API, so there's the ability to have a layer of intelligence on top. We would love to start seeing if we could build some sort of adaptive learning into these dashboards so they actively serve up insight. It's something we're looking at very early stages. Again, if there's any people, any undergrads or postgrads out there that have got a passion around this, we'd love to explore that with you as well. When it comes to risk, as I say, marketers sometimes get criticized for never carrying a bag, never having worked in sales, not very pragmatic, shall we say, and that's a little bit unfair. But at its most basic, marketing really is about making money, saving money, or delivering a degree of insight back to the business. And all too often, these projects are called things like the CRM project or the Pardot project, and the technology or the words used to explain the benefits are couched in the language of the vendors. So we'll often hear people talk about, wow, it does a bi-directional sync from the marketing automation system back into the CRM and back. And that will mean nothing to most executives running a business. So we think there's 12 business reasons for doing this stuff. I shared with you earlier the 5 or 6 that Fujitsu used to get this project over the line for them. And it's really important that when organizations and marketers start, that they start championing technology, they begin with the end in mind. So they focus on the dashboards, and that will give them time and credibility with the leadership team to implement this stuff. So we always start with clients with the dashboards and the intelligence they would like to see. And that gives them time as well. And then another thing, big thing, and this, I'm about to hand over to Matt now as well. This is really about change management. So that slide from Microsoft I showed earlier, describing the as-is and the to-be, that's classic change management. And John Cotter seems to be the one that a lot of our clients refer to, and the one that we talk a lot about building that appetite for change. But again, marketers love the innovation, they love the here and now, and often, it's fair to say that a lot of marketers haven't been mature buyers of technology in the way that maybe IT is, but that's because they have to react and work to a much faster pace. But there has in the past been an overemphasis on the technology acquisition and not on the skills transfer and organizational development. So again, when we work with clients, we spend a lot of time talking around operations, building playbooks, that's for education, for training, for translating the vendor language into their language. A lot around training. So with Grant Thornton, we built this center of excellence, the idea being that they're there to provide governance and coaching the rest of the organization to drive new thinking with technology. And only then do we then start looking at some of the campaigns that can happen as well. So hopefully that's been okay. I've gone through that in the whistle stop. I hope it made sense. There's a couple of questions here I'll take, and then I'll hand over to Matt for a few slides to talk about what we're looking to do. Daisy's asking, in the process of marketing automation, privacy is a potential downside. So how do consumers nowadays value their perceived privacy? Is it a big obstacle to promote technology adoption? No, not at all. Actually, a lot of organizations now have to implement this stuff because they have to show the ability to show how they manage people's data, how they manage the unsubscribes, so you have the right to be forgotten. And GDPR and privacy got organizations to think in much more responsible ways about it's this adage of, if the product is free, then you are the product. So what people are doing with data, we don't see the cavalier attitudes as we did in the past. Again, if I think back to Talk when Dido Harding, who is running, the COVID response at the moment, she resigned because there was a breach of data, and they did not have an auditable track record of where their data sat and where it was sitting, and the degree of privacy and encryption that was there. And so she was apologizing. She was forced to resign because they didn't have a handle on it. And ironically, that data was encrypted and so couldn't actually be abused anyway. And so what we're seeing now, a lot of organizations are actually appointing, when they're implementing this stuff, they are appointing privacy officers and technology security officers as well. So as I say, I don't think privacy is a downside at all, Daisy. I think it's a good thing, and I think it's encouraging organizations to do smarter marketing. In the case of Deloitte, one of the reasons they put this in place was because each of their partners were doing their own stuff. It was a bit like a Wild West. And so they were over contacting the same customers all the time. And it would get to the point whereby customers or prospects would just have enough. And so they'd unsubscribe and lose the relationship completely. So again, with these systems, you're able to be able to put suppression in place so that you can say, look, the customer can say, I only want to be contacted on certain things, and I only want to be contacted in this format. So privacy is a good thing, and it leads to more responsible marketing. There's another one. Can you please repeat some platform examples for small organizations? Yeah, sure. So I'm actually hoping to work with Philip on this one. One of his areas is championing Martec for SMBs. And so wouldn't it be great that, if we could almost develop a spine that would cost a small business less than £500 a month, for example. And I think you could do that with open source web systems, with some pretty simple, easy to use email systems. Again, with price comes functionality, but if you haven't got the skills, sometimes that functionality becomes a bit of a burden. So it's getting that balance as well. Quick question from Johnny here. What do you think is the reason why so many marketers do not implement these technologies properly? Well, often they buy on the back of the demo, so they get wooed by a demo. They get excited for the here and now. And in the past, they weren't mature buyers of technology because they could use their marketing budget to buy this stuff. They can buy it on a monthly process. And so we see a lot of that. What we are seeing, though, is a lot of second and third generation marketing leadership, CMOs, implementing, and the second and third time around, they're putting a lot more focus on skills development and organizational development as well, and bringing in new skills as well. Question here from, there's loads of questions here. Should I hand over to Matt? Would that be okay? And then
I was going to suggest that, Adam.
Yeah.
I think we've got 15 minutes to run.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think we can wash up with questions at the end.
Yeah.
But absolutely fascinating. So Matt, we'll hand over to you.
Thanks. Great. Thanks very much. So as has been alluded to, what we're looking to do is provide a level of training based off of the platforms that we work with. Adam's mentioned quite a few of them. What I want to do is I want to take you through the platform that we are choosing for this training, a little bit around how that's structured, what people can come to expect, and then also at the end, for those that do want to progress, there is an option for certification, but I want to talk a little bit around that. So it's been mentioned Pardot. Now, Pardot is an SMB tool. It was a part of Exact Target back in 2013. It was acquired by Salesforce as a part of a $2.6 billion acquisition. And Salesforce have folded it into their ecosystem as their B2b solution. One of the biggest things is that because it's owned by Salesforce, the biggest SaaS company in the world, it's very trusted for businesses that already have an existing set of technologies that are Salesforce. People will inherently go directly to Salesforce because they will trust. And also Salesforce does has a fantastic ability to make their platforms easy to use. It's intuitive. Their education platforms are very straightforward. So a lot of people get wooed by that. Now, obviously, it's completely dependent, the platforms that you go for based off of the requirements. Every single core marketing automation platform carries pretty much the same set of capabilities, but with different flavors. Now, one of the biggest things that's important to customers is its ease of use. So it's efficiency, it's intuitive, its implementation process is straightforward. Now, in terms of Pardot as well, it also has a very strong roadmap. What you can see on the right-hand side is called the Engagement Studio. This is essentially a canvas. So where Adam was talking around the responsive, intelligent campaigns that can be trigger-based and responsive, this is an example of what people can build. Now, Pardot has got an extremely strong roadmap. Salesforce have really kind of put a lot of effort in terms of the development teams, and they know where they want where their products are going. They've been renewing as well a lot of the integration with Salesforce CRM. So for those of you that might be familiar, so the customer relationship management software, there's a very close tie between those two platforms. So it's a two-minute bidirectional sync, which is the fastest in the industry. So there's a lot of those one-liners which catch a lot of people and lure them in. Finally, as well, just around the platform, in terms of enablement. So when someone chooses to purchase Pardot, there's a few options. Now, you first off have the vendor, Salesforce. They have their own professional services teams, so they can go ahead, they can implement your application for you, they can take you through a journey. You then have consulting businesses like us, so there's a massive partner ecosystem with Salesforce. And then you also have self-education. So self-education is where people perhaps have got prior experience with automation tools, they'll take them on board, they'll implement them themselves, and then they'll also train internally as well. However, the latter is typically why we get involved with a lot of businesses, because they haven't gone through the appropriate process, their teams aren't structured, or perhaps even the product isn't fit for purpose. So Pardot is a fantastic SMB tool, and that's why we're going to be focusing that in terms of the training itself. Adam, on the next. So what we're going to be looking to do is provide a one-day session, a fundamental session that will cover Salesforce terminology. It will show, because the close tie between CRM and Pardot, we're going to be providing basics of the Salesforce CRM, but the B2b marketing solution being Pardot. Because they have that roadmap of essentially pushing Salesforce and Pardot together as one instance, it's a consolidation project, as Adam mentioned, around where we're having disparate tools. Salesforce are very much making an effort to consolidate. So having a better understanding of CRM couldn't be more important now. Okay. Now, in terms of the actual fundamentals, what we typically tend to go through, and also to highlight, it is always our preference that it's done in person, because it's much easier to be able to gauge whether levels of understanding, to be able to help. It's not just a sit and being spoken at, it is a practical day as well, for those people that are wanting it to be. But it essentially breaks down the core fundamental components of the platform. So it goes through data management process. So we're touching upon all the things really that Adam's been talking around: data management, compliance. We're looking at the intelligent campaigns. We're looking at the capabilities of those. We're also looking at more of the reporting aspects. So revenue attribution for campaigns, life cycle, so where you can transition if it's more lead generation from new lead when it passes to CRM and then beyond. That full end-to-end, Pardot has an extremely strong ability to be able to report on that. And it's obviously hard to fit a lot into a day, but that day will give you a solid understanding of marketing automation platform's capabilities, being able to get a good grasp on Pardot's technology and Salesforce as a CRM. Now, in terms of how we tend to structure this as well, of groups, it's very much dependent upon the group size. Because if these sessions are ideally in person, what we tend to do is we don't tend to go above 15. So if there are a number of people that are particularly keen to be able to learn a little bit around Pardot and the basics of Salesforce and its CRM, fantastic. If it is a larger set of group, we might look to split it into different sessions. But what we're looking to, when we're looking to do this, is around March time. Obviously, depending upon what we can and cannot do with everything going on, it would be great whether it's held in our offices, we have a fantastic facility for it, or whether it's done at your campus, because I'm very much aware it's just me traveling and not others as well. Okay.
Matt, do you mind if I just jump in there very briefly? So first of all, thank you very much for that overview. I'm going to invite Monica now, my colleague, just to say a couple of minutes on how that process will work in terms of the students engaging with this absolutely fantastic opportunity. I'm very conscious of time now, so but I'm going to hand over to Monica. Oh, I think we have a problem with your sound, Monica. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you very much for this great presentation, Adam and Matt. Just a few words about the training session. So those who are participating today and you're interested in this training opportunity from Clevertouch, please let your program leader know, send an email with your expressing your interest, and we'll get back to you in January with further information. So practically the first criteria was to participate in this session, and then we'll take into account the academic performance, but we'll get back to you with all of the details as Matt mentioned, because we need to plan that day and see whether we can go face-to-face or we will have that session online. We'll see how that goes. So I will get back to Philip now. Is that fine? Because we don't have a lot of time left. Thank you again. I took some notes. I still have questions. I don't think we have time.
I think lots of people are going to have questions, Monica. I'm sure both colleagues and students alike. Adam and Matt, we do have a few points in the Q&A. I think we've probably got time to take 2 of them, and then we'll wrap up in the last sort of 60 seconds. So I would invite both Adam and Matt to have a look at the Q&A and see if you'd like just to pick a couple there.
Matt, do you want to pick one?
Just loading them up.
Maybe the unsubscribed one from Alex, perhaps.
Yeah. Regarding the unsubscribes, what can marketers learn from people unsubscribing? What are the common procedures for managing people? What have we forgotten? And yeah, so this is a great question, Alex. And a lot of marketing automation vendors take actually different stances on this. And when a lot of the compliance regs were coming out, a lot of the platforms, funnily enough, weren't actually even capable in managing the process to become compliant. And I remember going to one particular vendor where they said to me, oh yes, we can do it, but we don't actively promote it yet because we don't actually have the feature built in for everybody. And that was for the right to be forgotten. And that was from a very large business, where if they were prodded, where they said, okay, yes, we want this functionality made available, they can do, but it wasn't an open source feature. In terms of managing unsubscribes, a lot of the platforms that we work with, so the marketing clouds, the Parlots, the Marketos, they all facilitate a single unsubscribe, so a one-click unsubscribe. So when someone decides that they don't want to receive marketing communications, they can go ahead, click unsubscribe. That populates a field in the record in MA, in the marketing automation environment, sorry, and then it will also update the corresponding record in the CRM environment. But don't forget, that's a bidirectional sync. So if there are changes made in CRM, it also reflect in MA, and people would be unsubscribed. In terms of things like preferences, obviously what we try and steer people towards is, instead of that global unsubscribe, we want people to be able to set preferences to tailor what communications are being sent to them. So that's what we try and heavily influence when we go through a lot of these projects, is instead of that massive drop, especially when people perhaps have had quite large windows of not being active with a lot of marketing campaigns, they do notice that sharp decline. Now, what we also need to bear in mind is, when people do want that right to be forgotten, how do we do that? And a lot of different platforms take different stances on this. Now, the one thing is when you want to register for to be forgotten, essentially, yes, okay, a lot of these platforms are capable of removing records. However, should you at a later point be recreated, we need to remember that you previously unsubscribed. So even though that there are these the rules around to be forgotten, a lot of the platforms do have to remember you in order, if under some circumstances you were to come back. Okay, but what we need to do is very closely manage a lot of these procedures. With GDPR as well, we have to be very particular with what we store. It's fine with a single Right, but we also have to store things like the details behind why people are unsubscribing, statements that were mentioned, etc. I could talk about this a lot.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have the time, Matt, but that's great. Thanks for the answer. I think, Adam, there's an interesting one here, if you wouldn't mind taking it, from one of our colleagues, Hongfei, which is talking about the sort of game-changing marketing technology that's around the corner next decade. Could you speak to that for a minute or so?
Sure, I'd love to. I think I sort of, hi Humphrey, I think I sort of alluded to a little bit when I talked about the limitations of these platforms. And the biggest limitation is the fact that they're rules-based. So they're predetermined by the companies and not by the consumers. And so as these systems need to become more adaptive, whether it's the reporting or the campaign journeys, and you know, if you look at chat, for example, there's a certain degree of automation there, but again, it's largely rules-based. These systems, whether you call it machine learning or AI, they need to build a lot more of that into the platforms. And again, unfortunately at the moment, it seems that any sort of business that has an idea and calls itself an AI business is able to get funding. And AI, machine learning, it was invented by IBM in the 50s. It should be an inherent technology, an underlying technology, and not the product itself. And that's where companies are going wrong. But adaptive technologies, machine learning needs to be built throughout the spine, and it's not there yet.
Great. Thank you, Adam, so much. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. I think it's always a hallmark of a good session when you've got so much Q&A and chat going on. So that's a great testimony. So again, I would really like to just extend my thank you to both Adam and to Matt for taking time out in the evening to impart their wisdom. It's been fascinating, and there's many other words we could use, but definitely that's one of them. And it's just, you know, a great testimony that our head of department, Parav, and working with Rob and Monica and a bunch of other colleagues are engaging with Clevertouch on this really exciting research going forward. So guys, thank you very much. Really also looking forward to students engaging, Matt, with you in the training opportunity. I think that is a wonderful opportunity for our students.